Hi, I'm Dr. Alex Lloyd again, and I've decided to add some stuff. And some of this is going to be integrated into the part I've already recorded. Some of it is new. It's not necessarily in order as I'm recording it. I'm just trying to get it all recorded in one place, which I've never done before anywhere. This is through all of my books, all of my packages, when I speak in person. This is sort of kind of the things people have told me were most helpful, kind of a greatest hits from all of that over 35 years in ministry, mainstream counseling and therapy, and then the weird stuff I do now. Okay? So this is not really for public consumption, although I might send it to a few people to get their feedback and tweaks. All right. So let's continue. The last thing we looked at was this, which is how we work. Something happens, it comes in through our senses, is compared to every belief, thought, emotion, feeling, every memory, ancestry stuff passed down, all of that. It's filtered through all of that, and then we have a reaction or an action. A reaction is when we react wrongly to something, but usually in pain or pleasure, because it reactivated a trauma down here that's never been resolved. Okay? And if that happens, it's a reaction, and very often working against our own health and happiness. If it did not reactivate a trauma, and it's just truth and love and the best thing to do and right and all of that, along with our conscious mind, then we act, not react, appropriately in truth and love. Okay? The problem is we think we're responding to this. We're not. We're responding to these. You fix these and this changes automatically, which is your thoughts, emotions, feelings, beliefs, stress paradigm, and actions and behaviors, which will change everything in your life. Okay? So that's where we ended. Now, I think I'm going to call this, and I kind of got this from David Mills, my good friend. I think I'm going to call this the rigged game paradox. Okay? You're living in a rigged game. We've talked about that. On the one hand, a rigged game sounds bad, right? Like I remember going to the state fair and spending all my money trying to win a stuffed animal or something, and finding out later that the games were rigged. They were almost literally impossible for anybody to win. There was some trick about it. Like the basketball one, you know, you think, hey, I'm a decent basketball shooter. But what you don't know is the basketball is a little bit oversized and the rim is way undersized. It's like a kiddie rim, even though it looks normal. And so it's very difficult, even for a good shot, to make. I used to do one where you were trying to toss a softball into a big wicker basket, which looks easy. Problem is, at the bottom of the wicker basket, there were springs that would kick the softball out, which is illegal. They got shut down later. We didn't find out about that till later. But they were rigged games, okay? And that's happened in carnivals going back 100 years, that those games are rigged, a lot of them. And a lot of them have a bad reputation for that. Some have even been sued criminally for some of those things, okay? So it sounds bad when you hear rigged game, and it is if you're just blindly doing what your parents did and living your life without really thinking about it. That's the unexamined life is not worth living. One of the very famous quote, okay? Or Einstein's definition of insanity, to keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. The other side of that is to keep doing the same thing and you're not expecting different results, but you can't quit doing the same thing. It's a habit or addiction or whatever. Your neural pathways are formed on that, and it's almost impossible to change them once they get to a certain point. On the other hand, a rigged game is great news if you understand how you work, how you think correctly versus incorrectly. About 80% of people are thinking incorrectly, and that's what's leading to their problems. If you switch that, understanding how you work, and start thinking correctly, a lot of times without any codes or any intervention at all, things start healing, changing for the better dramatically. It's like a miracle. And it's like, how can that happen? It happens because now you're living the way you're built to live. Remember Dr. Carolyn Leaf, if we have a continual negative, it's always a malfunction because we don't have any mechanisms for a continual negative. They're all for positive. So if you're experiencing that, something's wrong. It's a malfunction. And it's virtually always that you're thinking wrong, which is causing a negative domino effect every single time, and you're just doing it over and over and over. So, to start kind of this additional material, what's it all about? Number one, I want you to know you now. And I think that will change your entire life if you're one of the 80% that don't know you, and so you're living based on just what other people do, not necessarily what you should do, and wondering why you're not getting the results you want. Number two, and this is critical, understanding is the key to everything. We've already talked about that with the parable of the sower and the 30, 60, 100-fold increase. But if you don't understand, there's no increase. And it's probably even a curse, as we've talked about on the rigged game side, instead of a blessing on the rigged game side. Okay? Understand you now. If you do those two, it will heal you now, empower you now toward your best life possible and the best success for you, whatever that is, and it's different for everybody. To love you now. Do you know how many people don't love themselves? Don't even like themselves? You think that's going to be a great life? No. And then back to the same place. Back to knowing who you are, thinking that way, living that way, and it changing everything. Okay. Feelings versus emotions. They're both useful, but they're different. Okay? You follow your feelings to the source problem. For your emotions, you just do whatever you need to do to make your circumstances more comfortable. Emotions are about physical and external circumstances. Feelings are about your heart, unconscious, ancestry, all that stuff. And your unconscious is 1,000,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind. So if they conflict, your unconscious is going to win every time. You've got to heal your heart. The research says the average person leans 80% to the negative. And 80% of people lean 80% to the negative. Okay? We got to switch that to 80% positive. Then you're not going to be following your feelings to the source problem, because the problem's going to be gone. The problem was that negative anger, low self-worth. I can't do it. The world is a scary place. It's not safe. You know, all that stuff. Okay, so I'll give you an example with Hope, my wife. When we first got married, and in those early years, Hope struggled with depression. Most people have already heard that for about the first 12 years of our marriage. And I was in full-time ministry. I was a youth minister. So we were doing, camps, retreats, parties, devotionals all the time. I mean, most weekends we had something going on. And these were usually at big churches. So there was a lot of kids and more activities. Okay? Well, Hope, if we were having a pizza party on Saturday night, Hope would be filled with anxiety and fear for the entire week leading up to that pizza party, afraid that she would be there. People wouldn't like her. They would look at her funny. She didn't even know why. It was really free floating. It didn't make sense. And that's how you know the difference between a feeling and an emotion. An emotion is consistent with your circumstances. It's too hot in here. I'm not comfortable. Okay, let's change something about our circumstances. Turn up the air conditioning. All right? Or I need to make more money. Or I need to go get this health thing checked out, or whatever, all right? But her feelings didn't make sense with their circumstances. That's how you know it's a feeling instead of an emotion. So that's free floating. That comes from unconscious ancestry, etc., all right? So you can follow that anxiety back, find the early anxiety memories that have those feelings in them and are broadcasting them to the hypothalamus that puts us into fight or flight, resolve the anxiety, like with Hope, and all of a sudden, she's okay going to pizza parties. She even looks forward to them. Well, what changed? The pizza party didn't change. She changed internally. Let me go back. She changed some of these. And that's the signal being sent to the hypothalamus that sent her into fight or flight that gave her anxiety all week leading up to the party when she should not have had anxiety. There was nothing threatening or scary there. And when we fix these, that's exactly what happened. It changed her from reaction to action, appropriate action. All right? And then the emotions, you turn up the air conditioning or do whatever you need to do, all right? But the emotions are your conscious mind, will, emotions, conscious rational thinking, primarily left brain, feelings, primarily right brain, and unconscious ancestry, etc. All right. Do you have a disease? I've asked this question a lot when I've done live workshops and seminars. So here's what I want to ask you. Do you have a disease or significant illness right now? Wherever you are, just raise your hand or lift a finger or whatever. If you're with other people and don't want to be embarrassed, just raise your hand in your mind. But raise your hand if you have an illness or disease right now, today. Okay? What's the point? The point is, if every single person who ever sees this does not raise their hand, then you're wrong. It's not a matter of will you get cancer? Will you get diabetes? Will you get Alzheimer's? Will you get